Jimmy Hoffa is at the center of one of the most notable unsolved missing person cases in America. The famed and powerful labor leader in the early 70s went missing on July 30th in 1975. And if you're familiar with the case, you know that on this day, his body has never been found, and authorities haven't agreed on an explanation for what actually happened. This Live Now and Then special takes a look back at Hoffa's disappearance and the rise of his notoriety.
What if I told you that one of America's greatest mysteries was solved not by the FBI, not by confessions from dying mobsters, but by a single phone call from a man who'd been carrying a terrifying secret for 50 years? The Jimmy Hoffa case has been cracked, and the truth is more disturbing than anyone ever imagined. Scientists have confirmed it, DNA evidence backs it up, and the location? It was right under our noses the entire time. Stay with me, because what you're about to learn will change everything you thought you knew about this legendary disappearance. The witness who changed everything. Meet Jeff. In 1975, he was just 22 years old, a recent college graduate working construction beneath New Jersey's Pulaski Skyway. What he witnessed that summer afternoon would haunt him for the next 5 decades. Picture this: black Cadillacs pulling up to an active construction site, one bearing Michigan license plates. Men in dark suits emerged, and from the trunk of one vehicle, they pulled something large wrapped in a white sheet. Jeff watched in frozen terror as these men lowered their cargo into an open pit. His father's warning echoed in his mind. These weren't the kind of men you crossed. So Jeff kept his mouth shut, carrying this burden through decades of FBI investigations, media speculation, and countless theories about what happened to Jimmy Hoffa. Why did Jeff finally speak up in 2023? His answer was chillingly simple: everyone's dead now. The fear that had silenced him for half a century was finally gone, replaced by an overwhelming need to unload the truth he'd been carrying. The attorney's obsession. While Jeff remained silent, Chris Franzblau, a New Jersey attorney, was quietly collecting pieces of a puzzle that wouldn't let him go. Franzblau wasn't your typical lawyer. He had an elephant's memory and an insatiable curiosity about the criminal underworld he navigated professionally. Throughout his career defending mob-connected clients, Franzblau heard whispers, caught glances, and noticed patterns. He kept detailed journals of conversations that seemed meaningless at the time, but painted a larger picture. When clients mentioned a construction site that suddenly shut down in late 1975, or when someone's face changed at the mention of certain locations, Franzblau filed it all away. By the 1990s, while everyone else had given up on Hoffa, Franzblau remained convinced the official story was incomplete. He wasn't seeking fame or fortune. He was driven by the kind of obsession that only comes from knowing you're close to something big. The phone call that broke everything open. In late 2023, Franzblau's phone rang. On the other end was Jeff, the construction worker who had witnessed something unthinkable nearly 50 years earlier. Unlike the countless false leads and attention seekers Franzblau had encountered over the years, Jeff was different. He wasn't trying to sell a story or make headlines. He simply wanted someone credible to know what he had seen. Franzblau listened as Jeff described that July afternoon in precise detail: the location relative to support beams, the depth of the excavation, the Michigan plates on the Cadillac. This wasn't the ramblings of someone seeking attention. This was the testimony of a man who had been carrying a terrible burden and finally found the courage to speak. Scientific investigation begins. Unlike the FBI's massive media-heavy operations of the past, this investigation was surgical in its precision. Armed with Jeff's exact coordinates, scientists arrived at the Pulaski Skyway site with ground-penetrating radar and sophisticated soil analysis equipment. What they discovered sent shockwaves through the forensic community. Beneath the surface lay clear evidence of human-sized soil disturbance, earth that had been excavated and carefully refilled decades ago. The soil samples revealed elevated levels of decomposition gases, nitrogen, and phosphorus, chemical signatures consistent with human remains. But the most compelling evidence came from degraded fabric fibers and chemical traces consistent with human blood, found at the exact spot Jeff had described. When DNA testing was performed on these samples, though old and partial, they showed a strong familial match to DNA previously submitted by Hoffa's family. How the FBI nearly solved it in 2022. Here's where the story becomes truly infuriating. In 2022, the FBI conducted a major excavation at the Pulaski Skyway, bringing in heavy equipment, forensic archaeologists, and cadaver dogs. Media crews camped out for days expecting a major breakthrough. When they found nothing, the site was officially marked as investigated and cleared. The cruel irony: they had been digging just feet away from where Jeff witnessed the burial. The FBI's search grid stopped mere yards short of the actual location. If they had expanded their perimeter by just a few meters, or followed up on all radar anomalies, they might have solved the case 3 years earlier. The Bureau's failure wasn't due to lack of resources or commitment. It was a combination of vague initial tips, bureaucratic pressure to show quick results, and the institutional fatigue that comes from decades of false leads. By 2022, the Hoffa investigation had become more about managing expectations than solving the case. The disturbing reality. What makes this discovery so disturbing isn't just that Jimmy Hoffa's body was dumped like garbage beneath a busy highway. It's that the answer was hiding in plain sight for 50 years, while the FBI spent millions of dollars chasing ghosts across the country. Think about it. While investigators were digging up farms in Michigan, draining lakes in Florida, and following tips that led nowhere, Hoffa's remains were resting beneath one of the most heavily traveled highways in New Jersey. Thousands of cars passed over that spot daily, completely unaware of the dark secret buried below. The forensic evidence suggests Hoffa wasn't just killed. He was disposed of with calculated precision at an active construction site where his burial would be hidden forever by infrastructure development. This wasn't a crime of passion. It was a methodical elimination designed to ensure he would never be found. Hoffa's final day revisited. To understand the magnitude of this discovery, we need to revisit July 30th, 1975. Jimmy Hoffa left his Michigan home that afternoon wearing a dark suit, headed to meet Anthony Giacalone and Anthony Provenzano at the Machus Red Fox restaurant. These weren't casual acquaintances, they were dangerous men with deep ties to organized crime and the Teamsters Union. Hoffa arrived at the restaurant around 2 p.m., but by 2:45, witnesses saw him leave, clearly agitated. His car was found the next morning in the parking lot, personal belongings untouched, no signs of struggle. What happened in those crucial minutes between his frustration and his disappearance remained a mystery until Jeff's revelation. Now we know that sometime after leaving that restaurant, Hoffa was transported to New Jersey, where his story ended in a construction pit that would become his unmarked grave for half a century. The broader implications. This breakthrough raises uncomfortable questions about other unsolved cases. If a secret this significant could remain buried for 50 years despite intense federal investigation, what other truths are still hidden? The discovery has reignited interest in cold cases across the country and sparked debates about investigative methods and resource allocation. For Hoffa's family, who have lived with uncertainty for decades, this development offers the possibility of closure they never thought would come. Legal experts suggest that if remains are formally identified, it could trigger new investigations into surviving individuals who may have been involved in the conspiracy. What happens next? The investigation is far from over. Scientists are working carefully to preserve every fragment of potential evidence, hoping to recover enough material for conclusive DNA identification. Multiple independent forensic teams have verified the findings, and the scientific consensus is building that these are indeed Hoffa's remains. Legal teams are already mobilizing. There's no statute of limitations on murder, and while many suspected conspirators are now dead, some names in government files remain unresolved. The formal identification of remains could reopen investigations that have been dormant for decades. The Jimmy Hoffa mystery that captivated America for half a century has finally been solved, not by federal agents or mob informants, but by one man's decision to break his silence and a team of scientists who knew exactly where to look. The truth is more disturbing than fiction. A powerful labor leader reduced to unmarked remains beneath a highway, his location known by one terrified witness who carried the secret for 50 years. This case proves that sometimes the most incredible stories are hiding in plain sight, waiting for the right moment and the right person to bring them to light. If this revelation has shocked you as much as it has the rest of the world, make sure to hit that like button and subscribe for more deep dives into mysteries that shaped our history. The truth, as they say, is often stranger and more disturbing than anything we could imagine.